what I experienced from my club was when it came to brass tacks, they didn't care about women at all.
My message to all these organisations is don't wait to be sued, do the right thing and comply with the law now and, make it fair for everybody.
Hi, I'm Jane.
Hi, I'm Mara Yamauchi.
Hi, I'm Natalie Daniels.
And I'm Bex.
And we are
Insightful Sisters.
Hi, everybody. It's just me tonight because Bex has tech issues and so won't be joining us, unfortunately. And she's missing a treat because we've got Mara Yamauchi and Natalie Daniels, both elite runners with us. Mara is from here in the UK. She is an Olympian. She's a bronze medalist in the 2006 Commonwealth Games. And from 2006 to 2022, she was the second fastest female marathon runner. Mara is also on the advisory board of Sex Matters. Along with Mara is Natalie Daniels. She's also an elite runner and a marathon champion. She was famously cancelled by her teammates after speaking out against the inclusion of trans athletes in the Boston Marathon. So we're really delighted to have you tonight. I'm feeling a little unfit. I've been doing some star jumps just to get ready for this episode, but it's lovely to see you both. So tell us, what does it take to make an elite runner?
Well, I don't know if I've always really struggled with that descriptor because I feel like there's so many people, especially now, who are so much faster than me. But what I really think when my speed and ability, I feel like really took off, is when I stopped caring so much. So I ran in college and I was very average. Ran in high school for a year, was very average. And then it wasn't really until I was doing these longer distances, marathons, half marathons, and I just started realizing like I kind of don't care about how I stack up against other people. And that's when I really kind of my speed got skyrocketed. So that's, I suppose, the secret to my success is just not caring and not obsessing about nutrition and all these optimization characteristics.
I retired in 2013. But when I was an elite athlete, it was my full-time job for 7 years. Every day was training, going to the physio, massage, preparing for the next race, being really careful about what I ate, injury prevention, mental preparation. It's a full-time job and lots of pressure. Balancing being an elite athlete with family life and other activities, work is really challenging. You have to work so hard to reach elite or sub-elite levels, often over many years.
It's a labor of love too. I feel like you have to choose to do it because there's, like you said, there's so many other things that you could be spending your time on.
I'm going to start with you actually, Mara, because one of the things that I found quite inspirational about your story was I don't want to say the time that it took you, but the fact that you were, I think, quite late to be doing your first big races. Do you want to tell us a little about that?
Yes, I was a keen runner at university and I raced for the university. You could probably say I was sub-elite, but then I went off and worked as a diplomat for 10 years. And it was really only when I was 29 that I really committed to doing the marathon and trying to reach elite level. So I was older as an elite athlete, but I first had a dream to become an elite athlete at age 11. When I stood on the start line of the Olympics, I was 35. So it took me 24 years to kind of realize that dream. So a huge amount of hard work goes into reaching a high level. And yeah, I was older, but in the marathon, you can reach a high level even at a slightly older age. You can't do that in some of the power events like sprinting or the jumps, but in the marathon, you do see older athletes doing well.
Yeah. I mean, you said you worked as a diplomat, and you're currently now you're on the advisory board of Sex Matters, aren't you?
That's right, the advisory group, yeah, which is a bit different to the board. Yeah, so because I was an elite athlete, I come at the sex and gender debate from a sport perspective, and I started speaking out in June 2021, which was just after Maya Forstater won her appeal. And yeah, as we know, very few athletes speak up. But it was around the time that Laurel Hubbard qualified for the Tokyo Olympics in women's weightlifting, and I thought, this is just so wrong, I have to say something. And also, because I'm older and retired, I want the younger women and girls who come after me to have fair and safe sport. So, people like Natalie, who's much younger than me, if the female category didn't exist, younger athletes like Natalie who are now pursuing their dreams in running, they wouldn't be able to fulfill their dreams if they had to compete against men. So that's why I started speaking up.
I can remember the Laurel Hubbard thing. It was just about the time that I was really getting interested in this. And I remember you speaking out, and Sharon Davis was speaking out about it. And it was so heartening to hear those voices, because you felt like there was this silence, and that felt so terrible for thinking about girls coming through.
Yeah, I mean, Sharon has been in the trenches for a long time, much longer than me. But yeah, a young female weightlifter from the South Pacific did not go to the Olympics because a man was there. And it's just so wrong. And I feel like almost like a novice compared to the likes of Sharon Davis. But, people come at this for many different reasons. I wish I'd spoken up earlier, but my father was really ill with dementia, and I just didn't have the kind of capacity to do it. So, and it depends, what's happening in your life. So Natalie ran the Boston Marathon. I'm sure she'll tell us about it. But, Boston Marathon is one of the races which allows men in all the categories. So, this was quite a recent cancellation for Natalie. But yeah, in the end, we're all aiming for the same thing, which is fair and safe sport for women and girls without males in the female category.
Well, let's talk about the Boston Marathon. So, Natalie, you were a very experienced runner by the time you were to run at Boston. Is that right?
Yeah, so Boston was my 19th marathon, but I had never done it because it's really expensive and the logistics are really tricky. And I've always really thrived on smaller races. So I qualified March of 2024, and that race qualified me for the professional field. And I registered when I was 8 months pregnant. And the story in my mind was I had a really difficult pregnancy, and this was going to be sort of my celebration of my female body, and showing my son that his mom does hard things and can challenge herself. And then in January of 2025, I saw a post from Jen Say about a male runner who was bragging online that he had qualified for the Boston Marathon and was running in the women's category. And this runner, we see this story a lot, but this runner wears these like sexy costumes, and it's sort of a farce, right? It's like I show up and I'm thinking about, is this outfit going to chafe? Are my boobs going to be supported? Do I have, pockets for my gels? And here's somebody who puts on a costume, perks up the fake boobs, and kind of makes a joke out of this. I've heard it referred to as, the amateur Olympics, because it is this incredibly competitive amateur sporting event. And that's from the top of the field, the professionals, all the way down to the older ages, because to place in your age group at Boston, it's also incredible, right? Like if you're competing against the best 70 to 75-year-olds, arguably in the world in the marathon, you can see how you stack up against them. And so I was really frustrated by that. It felt to me like a slap in the face to whip female athletes. And like I know women who have qualified for Boston but not made the cutoff. And so they don't get to run Boston. So I reached out to Jen about kind of elevating this, because it's one of these
Jen,
things.
you mean Jennifer Say?
Jennifer Say, yeah.
Do you want to explain who Jennifer Say is, just in case people?
Yeah. Well, so she started XXXY Athletics, but she has a much longer and storied history of speaking out against things that are wrong. So she's somebody that I've admired for a long time. I started following her during COVID.
And she was an athlete herself, wasn't she?
Yeah, she was the world champion in gymnastics. I don't know if she went to the Olympics or not. I can't remember. But she's very, very, very accomplished gymnast. I admire her a lot. And she also, so founded XXXY Athletics specifically to support and bring awareness to this issue of men invading women's sports, women's spaces, and also making really good sportswear.
Yeah.
I race in it, and you don't chafe, you got enough pockets, it's all supportive, it's all good stuff. So I That's like the aside. It's like you buy it because of the mission, but you stay because it's like really great.
Do you think it's an accident or a happy accident, perhaps, that this your peaking coincided with motherhood?
Yeah, 100%. And there are a couple of instances I can think of, especially during pregnancy. We talk about the phrase pregnant person or birthing person and chest feeder and all this stuff. I mean, it's dehumanizing to use the word that I love to use. It makes you feel like, this non-human entity doing something that's deeply unnatural. And that's not the case at all. And I had a few instances with that, and definitely and specifically post as soon as my son was born, I felt like I knew. Like there was this intuition, there was this mother's intuition. There was like I loved breastfeeding more than I expected to. And it was a little challenging at first because he was early, but I felt this incredible confidence in my body to be like, well, we'll figure it out. And that was very hard. It is the ideology is so pervasive everywhere you go that like I had all these things and I had to constantly be assessing what's auto playing on the TV, what books we're getting from the TV, what messages are being sent out at our church. I left my church shortly after he was born because they had this very, very strong gender ideology that was really pervasive and it was growing and getting worse. And I was like, I can't support this anymore. I don't feel comfortable sending my kid to the nursery or to a youth thing because he might come out and say, "Oh, I think I'm a non-binary." Like you can't. It's crazy. So it heightens you to this of you know there's so many messages in our society that you have to be cognizant of because
Yeah.
they're so damaging.
Yeah.
But really my like turf peaking point was there were two. The first was the middle school shot put girls.
Okay.
So that's the BPJ versus West Virginia story. So they staged a peaceful protest. They scratched against BPJ, the male athlete. And I just remember watching the video and thinking, like, where are the adults? Why isn't anybody saying anything about this?
Yeah.
And I had this kind of like voice in my head that said, well, you're an adult. Like, you could say something.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, I guess you're right. And then the second piece was me, where I live in Northern Virginia, there is a tier 3 convicted sex offender and pedophile who was identifying as a woman and going into public school locker rooms and community center locker rooms and exposing himself.
Wow.
And he was not prosecuted. Well, he was prosecuted in one county and they ended up dropping the charges. So, and it was purely based on we don't want to antagonize this ideological rock that is antagonistic and there is no leniency. There's no discussion. It's just you either see the woman like any other woman
Mm.
or you're a hateful bigot.
Yeah.
I think we'll go back to the Boston Marathon because I do want to know what happened. You'd spoken out, you'd spoken to Jennifer Say, and then things were going ahead as far as you knew. You were about to run in the Boston Marathon. It's a big deal. The qualifying is complicated, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah. So you have to not just qualify for the race, you have to be underneath a certain, what we call the buffer time. So they only take 25,000 people. And so it's the 25,000 people fastest people who also qualify, if that makes sense. So there are people who hit the standard but don't get in because they're not one of those 25,000.
Okay. So each of those trans-identified men who run, they do. Is there a male-female quota?
I would think so with Boston. I'm sure that there is.
So they're taking a woman's place.
Exactly. Yes. So they have male, female, and non-binary.
Yes.
And I'm sure there's, whatever the quota is for non-binary, they're not hitting it. But yes, they're doing two things. They're actively taking a spot from a biological female, and they're moving the needle on how fast Boston thinks women need to be to qualify. So
Yes.
Boston periodically makes the general standard faster, and they make it faster in response to who is submitting qualifying times. So if men are submitting qualifying times and they're 15 minutes under the standard, if you get enough of those, it's going to look like, well, women are just getting faster. And that is true. More women are getting faster with more technology and support and all these things. But it's a glitch in the data, right? It's not accurate because they're males.
Yes, of course. You were ready to run.
Mhm.
And then what happened?
So I'd done the podcast with XXXY and it goes live on Instagram. And immediately there were people I knew, a lot of people in my area who were like pissed off about it. And I was kind of like, whatever.
Yeah.
So these like 25 people who have nothing better to do are annoyed about it. We drive up to Boston and I noticed that it's kind of starting to take on like a viral quality. And then there is a woman who runs and writes a blog called Fast Women. She picks it up. She sends it to Nikki Hiltz, who then makes this hate video about it.
So for people who aren't in this world, tell us about Nikki Hiltz. Who's Nikki
Yeah.
Hiltz?
So Nikki Hiltz is a female American Olympian in the 1500s. She's incredibly fast. Right now, she has the world lead in the miles. She's very, very talented. She identifies as non-binary, but specifically regularly goes on the record talking about how she thinks that trans-identified males who identify as girls should be allowed to compete in women's sports at all levels, including hers. Her world lead time right now gets beat by 300 to 500 high school boys every season.
Okay.
But so it's this very hypocritical situation. She's very vocal about it.
So she's non-binary, but she runs so she's happy to put that aside when she runs in the women's category, and
Yeah,
she's
and there's
happy to put it aside and let men run in the women category.
Yep. And she has said also that she resents that USATF and WADA, which is the World Anti-Doping Association or agency, will not allow her to take testosterone while continuing to compete as a woman. It's like, well, duh.
Yeah.
Why would we do that? So there's just this, it's just extraordinarily hypocritical. But in this video that she makes, she goes after me, says the line that stands out to me is, why do you care if you're 901st or 900th because a trans woman might beat you? And it just really downplays, like, I just want to say I was 110th at Boston out of, I think it was like 12,000 women.
Wow.
I gotta look again. But this in 6 months postpartum. So I'm gonna toot my own horn on that level.
Yeah.
I was very proud of that. But really, completely downplays the idea of amateur recreational runners who want to compete on a fair and level playing field. Oh, you don't deserve it because you're just not as special good as me.
So only people who are on the podium really count then, according to Nikki Hiltz.
Exactly. And she actively chooses not to compete against males or non-binaries who are mostly males because she knows she would get smoked. And it's just incredibly hypocritical and it's disrespectful because, here, to Laura's point earlier, here are, in this case, 25,000 individuals who have worked really, really hard to be here and sacrificed a lot and put in, hundreds of miles of training, invested a lot of money, a lot of time in this to stack up, to see how they stack up against their peers on this day.
Yeah.
And the BAA, the Boston Athletic Association, doesn't see the value in protecting the integrity of the women's field. And when an elite athlete like Nikki Hiltz says it gives this indication that, yes, you actually don't matter. All of this work that you put in, it's really not important.
Wow.
There were a couple of other things which Nikki said. One was Natalie said something like, "This unfairness makes me want to drop out," and Nikki opened her video with, "Yes, you should drop out. Just drop out." So she was saying to Natalie, "Don't do the Boston Marathon. Just drop out." This is just because Natalie spoke up for fairness. And she also said about Natalie, "You're not going to be winning this race, and you're not going to be winning prize money. So why do you care?" So again, as Natalie just said, completely dismissing fairness for sub-elite women, of which there are many, many, many thousands. So And just to come back to your point about Nikki herself and which category she competes in, she would not qualify in the male category. If you look at the qualifying standards for women and men in comparable races at world level, so let's say the 100 meters, the 5,000 meters, the marathon, all of the qualifying standards for men are faster than the world records for women in every event. So Nikki would never even qualify in the men's category. You know, it's not about she would get smoked or would she even reach the final. She would never even qualify. So
It's a good point.
Did you and other sportswomen reach out when you saw this happening, Mara?
as it was going on, I wasn't aware of it, but I think soon after that, I was like, you know, what's happening? Who is this woman, Natalie, being cancelled for speaking up for fairness? So I started following Natalie, and we've interacted on Twitter since. And separately, I was also following the qualification stuff with the Boston Marathon because as Natalie said, like everybody has to qualify for Boston, you know, and getting what's called a Boston qualifier is very highly regarded by non-elite athletes. You know, you have to be quite good. And in all age groups, the men's times are 30 minutes faster than the women's times because men run faster on average than women. So, you know, for a man to qualify in the female category, he gets an extra 30 minutes. He can run 30 minutes slower than his fellow men and get a place. And also, all of the non-binary times are the same as the women's times. So any man who says he's non-binary gets that extra 30 minutes. But any woman who says she's non-binary does not get an extra 30 minutes. She still has to run the same time. So it's completely unfair against women. It's sex discrimination. You know, men are welcome in all three categories. And yet somehow this is supposed to be seen as progressive. And as Natalie said, if you have men in the female and non-binary categories, it will appear that, you know, the times are getting faster. So Boston may well make the qualifying standards harder, and that will exclude even more women. And I know of several men who qualified in the non-binary category who failed to get the times for the men's category in the same age groups. So these are just men with special identities who can't be bothered to train hard and qualify in the men's.
But they wear crop tops, Mara.
Yeah. So
They dress the part then.
That's how you know. You got to wear the crop top.
yeah, and in some, not in Boston, but in some other events, they're winning good money in the non-binary category. And, you know, obviously this is unfair for women, but it's also unfair for a lot of very good men. So there are loads of men between the elite men and the men winning money in the non-binary category who are much faster than the non-binary men, but they're winning nothing. And, you know, for those men, if I were one of those men, I would be pretty fed up seeing a guy 20 minutes slower than me winning $5,000 for running slowly just because he says he's non-binary.
And one of my favorite stories as of late that I thought when I read it, I was like, surely this will make people realize how ridiculous all of this is. But there was a story on a website called Marathon Investigation where they were looking into just a regular old guy who had abused this system and qualified under the non-binary times, even though he does not claim a non-binary identity in the rest of his life. And people were outraged. And they were saying, you know, how can we trust that the results of this non-binary field at Boston are going to have integrity if we just let regular old guys in? And I'm like, well, that's the whole point, isn't it?
Yeah.
Isn't the whole point that if you say you are what you say you are, then that's it. There's no more debate. And so here's this guy who says, well, yeah, I'm non-binary today.
Yeah, careful what
So
you
he
wish
can run
for.
Boston. But he's not non-binary enough. And therefore now it's an issue. But nobody cares about the women. So it's like you can say you're a woman and you are, but you can't just say you're non-binary and just suddenly become it. And there was a comment on it that I just was laughing and laughing and laughing because a woman said, I think we need to split the non-binary category into male non-binary and female non-binary because it doesn't really seem very fair to the women. And I was like, you're almost there. You almost got it. It's almost like there should be two sex classes.
It's like that J.K. Rowling tweet where she says, I wish we had a word for this.
If only we knew what to do, how to move forward with this.
Fantastic.
Laughed and laughed and laughed. But and it's unfortunate because I think running culture, for a very good thing about it is that it is somewhat universal. And this gets into park run, right? You can show up and run as fast or as slow as you want. You can walk as much as you want. And there's a place for you. And that's a wonderful thing, right? It's a very accessible sport. And it is inclusive in the general sense that it doesn't take a whole lot for somebody to come out and be a runner. And perfect example is park run. It's free. It's every Saturday. There's ones all over the world. But when we start ranking and competing and posting results and posting data about these things, it's important that that data have integrity. And the integrity is based on biological sex, kind of the end.
Yeah. Before we get on to parkrun, what happened with your teammates? Because you faced a bit of backlash, didn't you?
Yeah, so there was a lot of drama with my previous team. I ended up being kicked out for this, and specifically one of my favorite lines from the email that I received was one of my violations was repeatedly and intentionally misgendering Nikki Hiltz by referring to her as a woman. But she runs in the women's category. Like, what? How else do we square this? Just extraordinary levels of cope. But yeah, I had teammates telling people where our hotel was, sharing my Strava data with people, because there were people on Twitter and Instagram who were, they wanted to like hurt me and my family. So they were trying to hunt us down to
Wow.
do what? I don't know, yell at us. And then there was a couple people who said they wanted to they was like, save a full water bottle for when she comes by. We know what she looks like. And a lot of this there were a few people on my team who had kind of like orchestrated it, like had shared this information directly with these like lunatics. And I had brought that up specifically to my coach. And I was like, well, what are you going to do about these people? If I'm so, what I'm doing is so evil, how is this not evil? And his response was, maybe you should have thought about that. Like, this is just sort of what happens when you say things that are so hateful, is that you become deserving of violence.
It's telling you then that you've deserved this.
Yes. Yeah. And I think for me, that was a deciding kind of wake up moment for me. And I said, so they asked me not to wear the club singlet during the race, which was actually in kind of like an incredible circumstance. I had packed a full XXXY kit, which I had not thought that I had. So I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to wear. I don't have anything. And I'm going through my bag trying to find something. And I realized I brought this whole outfit, and I must have subliminally, I don't know, telepathically known that something was going to happen.
I saw that they asked you not to wear the team singlet, and I wondered what that felt like, because it's got in my mind, the sort of the soldier having pips torn off their arm, or people being told they can't wear a uniform. I imagine it's really quite hurtful, because when you put on that singlet and you're part of a team, you get it means something. Metaphorically, it means something, doesn't it?
Yeah. And so I had made it a point. I joined the team when it was still really, really new. And in fact, I joined when there was maybe like 2 women total as official members. And so it had been my personal drive to build a women's team, and to build a women's team that I wanted to be a part of. And so what that meant is that, we had women who were very competitive, who wanted to compete, but in a positive way. Not in a way where it was like, I'm better than you and we have to fight against each other to prove that we're better than each other. Because I had been a part of a team like that in DC, and it was incredibly toxic. And it made it not fun. So I was like, I want women who are committed to building each other up and kind of iron sharpening iron. We all get better together. Women who were another thing that was really important to me was masters runners. So in the Washington, D.C. area, we have a lot of women over 40 who are really talented. And there isn't really, elite running. These running clubs are often focused on people who are immediately out of college. So 23 to 30. And so that was another place where I really wanted to build women and let them know that you have a place here to be competitive. To Mara's point, there's a lot of women who come into their competitive spirit when they're older. Like, I'm 34. So I'm hoping that I still have I hope that I have at least one more marathon PR.
Well, looking at Mara's example, you have.
Right. I would say that's really motivating. So I had grown the team. And then in January of 2025, I had hosted this panel about women in running. And I wondered at the time if we were going to touch on this. And we ended up not. We talked about all sorts of stuff. But I hosted a panel at our annual fundraiser promoting amateur competitive running. And it was like, what can we do as a community to encourage women to be more competitive? Because we have fewer opportunities, we get less attention. If I want to run in a track meet at a local university, I have to basically prove that I can win the race. The men do not have that. They can show up and be in heats 2, 3, or 4. For a woman to do it, and this is funny because there's a big D3 school in our community. They were like, oh yeah, you got to run under 18 minutes in the 5K. I'm like, we don't have anybody on your team who can run 18 minutes in the 5K. So I have to win the race? And so we talked about some of these things, like the standards are much harder comparatively for women than they are for men to be considered elite. And basically what I heard and what I experienced from my club was when it came to brass tacks, they didn't care about women at all. It was all about this ridiculous ideological posturing. It was about paying homage to the mob and letting them know that they were, good progressives.
Yeah.
And it had nothing to do with protecting women. And a lot of women on the team left because of this. Members of the board left because of this, because there was this expectation. So my coach we had a series of phone calls during this whole thing. And he said, here's what you need to say in this apology to the club if you want to continue being a part of the club. And one of the, was like, I apologize if people were hurt. If people were hurt by my words and I want to open up an open dialogue with you, I'm like, okay, I'm sorry if you were hurt. And I definitely want to talk to you about it if you are. Like, that's how problems get solved. And then the other thing he wanted me to say was, word for word, I now understand that with enough surgery and enough hormones, a man can become a woman. And I was like, no, I won't say it. And it was like, that was the whole thing, is like, we have to control. There is no debate, right? You don't want conversation. You want to hear your mob's opinion coming out of my mouth.
Yeah, I mean, Natalie being instructed to say something like that by her running club coach is so egregious. I mean, not only telling Natalie she must lie to stay in the club, but stating something which is simply untrue. Humans cannot change sex. Sex is immutable. And yeah, it's so Orwellian in 1984, and especially to do this to a young athlete like Natalie. I mean, it's just appalling.
Well, one of my favorite parts of this too was Jen Say posted a Twitter in which she, I had communicated with her some of the stuff. We never mentioned the club. We just talked about, this is what they're asking her to do. This is what's going on in the background. We have the screenshots of the people on the team saying she's staying at this hotel. Here's her Strava link. So my coach called me and said, you need to tell Jennifer Say that she needs to take her tweets down. And I just busted out laughing. I was like, you must not know anything about Jennifer Say. Like, she's not going to do it. You cannot censor Jennifer Say's speech because and this is the thing, is like, that you look bad. You know that you have done something wrong and you want to control that narrative, and you can't, because the truth ultimately, it can't be denied. Reality cannot be denied. And I think we're starting to possibly be getting back to that place where people are like, well, duh.
Yeah. Is this ringing any bells from when you originally spoke out, Mara? In the way that other sports people reacted to you? Were you given similar messages to pipe down?
Well, I had interactions on Twitter with a GB race walker. He was accusing me of driving Laurel Hubbard to suicide. He was saying I was hateful, and he's an elite athlete. He was an elite athlete. He holds British records. He's performed very well at world level. He knows in his bones the difference between male and female performance. And there were other athletes who, I mean, mostly men who denounced me for speaking up. But this is how it is with this debate. Any woman who stands up, speaks the truth, defends women, is denounced as a Nazi, transphobe, bigot, whatever. And which, yeah. I just wanted to comment on Natalie's Boston experience as well. Just thinking back to when I was racing marathons, like 24 hours before a race is so critical. I had a schedule of what I would do, what I would eat, when I would rest, when I would, go to the technical meeting. I had it all planned out so that I didn't have to spend any time thinking about how am I going to do this and such, or what am I going to wear, or, because you don't want to waste any energy, mental or physical, just before a big race. And here was Natalie having to sort of, go through her bag, seeing if she's bought some spare kit, and keep looking over her shoulder to see if somebody was coming to the hotel to attack her. This is just so absolutely egregious what was done to her just before a race, and just so not in keeping with, elite performance. You just, and yet Natalie managed to run the race and, just refused to comply with these obscene demands that she lie, say that humans can change sex and all this. It's very, very witch hunting, very, very witch hunting.
Yeah. It's very public as well, isn't it? The whole thing is so public. You're shamed publicly, you're criticised publicly, and people feel that they've got to say publicly which side they're on.
Yeah.
I think in running too, this is an observation I've seen kind of over I've been running with post-collegiate clubs, not anymore obviously, but for about 10 years. And you see a lot of people on these teams who are very high achieving. We really we want to do the best that we can. We work really hard. We work hard at our jobs.
I'm sure you all are, actually, because I think to dedicate yourself to a sport as you do is part of the personality, I imagine.
Right. But a lot of us we're also bullied when we were in high school, middle school. A lot of us are really just weirdos. And so it was to me, I was seeing this kind of nerd strike back sort of thing. It's like, well, I'm not on the receiving end. So I feel emboldened to attack somebody else because I finally get to be the one who gets to hurt somebody. And that's a psychological thing I've talked about with people that, you see this sort of, it makes me wonder and almost empathize to an extent with some of the really radical activists. It's like you have just been, I'm sure that you have felt left out for a long time. Now you finally found this place to belong, except it's all a lie. Except it's all, it harms women. It harms you. It's not serving, but you have to defend it because you finally found this tribe. And it is tribalism, but taken to such an incredible extreme of very minute community, very, very fringe communities wanting to dictate, I should say, the thoughts of people, the private thoughts of people that they don't even know.
No, that's fascinating.
And that's what that's how I have sort of been thinking about it in the last year and a half is that why? Maybe to some extent. Some of them are just really sick. But some of them I really do think there is this inherent tribalism that the internet has encouraged where you can get as fringy as you want. And then if you have a tiny amount of power to hurt somebody else, they'll take it.
Yeah.
And I see it. DC is a whole lot. So a lot of weirdos. I mean, myself included in that. So I'm very type A.
We should look at where Natalie is now, having stood up for herself. Now you're the head of Team Women for XXXY Athletics. You're running brilliantly. You're speaking up for fair and safe sport for the women who come after you. So, I can't speak for you, but what you did, it's turned, you're in a good place now as far
absolutely.
as I can tell.
There is, what you're saying is there is a world beyond.
Well, absolutely. And I would say that it's way more significantly more fulfilling, right? Because I'm not policing my thoughts and actions. And so there's a lot of freedom and there's a lot of joy, in finding the community of normal, rational people, which Mara and we talked about this when I was in London. It's like, it's so refreshing to just get together with people who realize that reality is real.
Tell
Yeah.
us tell us about that get together. Mara, you organised that get together, I think, didn't you? You called it a
Yeah.
gathering, I think.
Yeah, so Parkrun has 4 categories called male, female, another gender identity, and prefer not to say. But they're all demarcated based on gender self-ID, not sex. And I and many other people oppose this because it's unfair for women. It's also unfair for men in one small way. But basically, everybody is welcome in all 4 categories. All men and all women are welcome in all 4 categories. So they're all mixed sex, which makes a complete nonsense of the categories. So in the female category, there are loads of men running in it of all abilities and speeds and ages. And I tweet about them each week. And there's nearly 300 occasions now where a man has been first female. About 20 female records are held by men. So this is all horribly unfair for women and girls. So I and other people who would like fairness in parkrun, we sometimes go to parkruns together wearing our Save Women's sports shirts, and we just attend. And if people come to speak to us, we tell them why we're there and why we're wearing the shirt, and we have a good time. And that's about it. And then I was in touch with Natalie on Twitter, and she said, I'm coming to the UK in July. So I said, great, do you want to come and do a parkrun with us? So that's how it started. And a group of us went to Battersea Parkrun on the 25th of July. And then we had brunch afterwards, and we had a fantastic time. And it was really interesting to hear from Natalie, more about her experiences. And parkrun is not as big in the US as it is over here, but yeah, it was fantastic. And, we're men and women, all ages, all abilities. So, me, I'm retired, but I still have this competitive spirit, and I try to be the top, like 50 to 54-year-olds. But then there are others who, they aren't necessarily trying to go fast, or they just want to complete it, or they're getting over an injury and they're trying to get back to running the whole way. So, you don't have to be aspiring to run fast to want fairness in parkrun.
The thing that's often thrown at people when they raise this issue about parkrun is that, well, it's just inclusive. It's sort of what Nikki Hilt said about you with the 900th or the 901st. Does it matter? Does it matter? So how do you answer that when people say that to you, Mara?
So, yeah, people say it's not a race, it's not a competition. They even say it's not a sport. And, well, what I would say is if you observe parkrun and how it operates, it's the following. They have a measured course of 5K. They have a start line and a finish line. Everybody sets off together on a starter's command. There are certain rules. They then publish official results, which are in descending order of speed. So the person across the line first is listed as 1. The next person's listed as 2. It's not alphabetical order or some random order. It's in speed order. And then they have these categories, male, female, although they're not actually male, female. They have age categories. So in reality, it is no different to a race. It is effectively a race. It's not me saying I want it to be a race. I'm just observing how it operates, and I recognize that as a race. And the fact that they have published official results in descending order of speed means, those results need to be fair. Otherwise, what's the point of having them?
They took the results down, didn't they?
No, so in February 2024, they got rid of a lot of the statistics that they produce. They kept the results and they kept some of the statistics, but they got rid of some. So they got rid of records, and they got rid of, for example, the fastest 500 list. That was a mixed sex list, so of course that was nearly all men. There are hardly any women on that list. But then there was a lot of backlash because people love their statistics and data. And Parkrun recently acquired an app which was called the 5K app. It's now called the Parkrun app. And on that app, there's pretty much all of that data available that they had previously been publishing. So effectively, Parkrun have returned the data, not on their own website, but on this now Parkrun official app. And there are plenty of people who don't care where they finished. They don't care about fairness, and that's fine. I'm not saying you must care about fairness. If there are women who don't care that a man is ahead of them in the female category, that's fine. They're entitled to their views. But many people do care. And many women and men care, and therefore they should be accurate. The one angle where it's unfair for men is in what's called age grade rankings. So everybody gets a position in Parkrun overall, and in the male and female, and in your age category. And then you also get what's called an age grade percentage score, and that's a proportion of the world record for your sex and age. So if I run quite close to the world record for women aged 50 to 54, I would get a percentage over 90%, so on. So that means everyone can compare themselves to everyone else, regardless of sex and age. You just compare your percentage. But men who compete in the female category get a massive boost to their age grade percentage. It can be between 10 and the highest I've seen is about 18%. So then when everyone is ranked by age grade, those men go way up the rankings, often to the top, even to the top all time. So, yeah. So that's, if you have categories called male and female and you publish official results, it has to be fair.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, when I see parkrun in my local park where they do parkrun, and you see people finishing parkrun, and the first thing they do is look at their watch. As they come over the line, they look at their watch.
Yeah.
It's obvious, sports people are competitive, and even if they're only competing against themselves, they want to get better. They want to know how they're doing.
Yeah. For older people, they're never going to be at the front, but they might be very good for their age.
Yes.
I mean, to give you an example, I have coached 2 women in their 70s who are national standard for their age. They will often win the over 70s in a race. One of them wins prize money. But compared to 20, 30, 40-year-olds, they're slow in inverted commas. But, if in parkrun, if they look at their age grade percentage, they'll be getting above 90%, even though they're in actual numbers of minutes.
Yeah.
They're not actually that fast.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this is to just go back quickly to that 900s or 901st. This is something that one of the women who left my former club because of this said in her email to the coach was, when Nikki said that and they liked the post, the club account liked the post. It's like, when Nikki says that and Horse approves of it, what you're saying is that you approve of what she's saying. And she's like, do I care if I'm 900th or 901st? Yes, I do. I do care. Because I'm working as hard as I can.
Yeah.
And I'm looking ahead and I'm trying to pass all of the women that I can see. And whether or not I'm first or last shouldn't matter. Because if you're second to last versus last, that's still a data point. And so this, it just really doesn't make, I don't know, it doesn't make sense. And it just makes amateur athletes, it reduces their efforts and the work that they put in.
So, Mara, tell us about parkrun and the fight back across the UK, because it's been quite extensive. The Women's Rights Network's been out quite regularly.
Yeah.
Protesting.
Yeah. So, I mean, we're recording this on the 5th of August, which is the date that the EHRC code has become statutory. So that means that none of these organisations can continue to say we're waiting for guidance. And the code was very clear that, and the Supreme Court judgment was very clear that where something is provided for males or females or men or women, that must be based on biological sex. And parkrun have categories called male and female. So that must be provided on biological sex. We haven't had any announcement from parkrun that they're changing their categories to sex, but the Women's Sport Union, run by Sharon Davis and Tracy Edwards, they are planning to take legal action against parkrun and a number of other sports organisations which still allow males in the female category. So we're expecting that soon, I think. I mean, my message to all these organizations is don't wait to be sued, do the right thing and comply with the law now and, make it fair for everybody. Yeah.
I noticed today that a few councils, I think Haringey Council, have made a statement about Haringey Council have made a statement about not agreeing with the new guidance that's come out, but they haven't said that they'll disobey the law.
Yeah.
Hopefully, parkrun and the other sporting bodies will just fall into line now, surely.
Yeah, I mean, it's a mystery why they're delaying. The EHRC code is not the law; it's just guidance. The law, the Equality Act, has been in force since 2010. It was clarified in April last year. Why all these organisations are still disobeying the law? Well, we know why. It's because they've been taken over by gender identity ideology and trans activists. But there really is no excuse anymore, and they really must comply with the law. And I think sports bodies which continue to allow males in the female category can expect legal action from female athletes and groups who support us, because this has just been going on for far too long.
And I think it's the area, or it's one of the areas that the public understands immediately, don't they?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, sport is very obvious. It's quite in your face. If you go and watch a park run, for example, you can see that the first 20, 40, 50 people across the line will be men. And then there'll be one woman, and then there'll be another 20, 40, 50 men, and then there'll be the second woman. So it's very obvious that males run faster than females. Yeah, I mean, you really don't have to be a scientist or even a keen sports fan to understand that males have advantages over females. Therefore, for females to be active and able to enjoy sport fairly and safely, there must be a female category. To give you an example, in 2009, I was ranked second in the world in women's road running, but 1,300 men ran faster than me in the marathon. It was just after I'd been to the Olympics. If the female category did not exist, 1,300 men were faster than me, I wouldn't have gone to the Olympics. So, the female category must exist in order for women and girls to participate in sport. So all these men who say, but let me into the female category because I'm really a woman and my identity is really important. Sorry, no, you can have the identity you want, but sport must be divided by sex for good reason. And we just don't make exceptions. People say, case by case, there are only a few. If they have surgery and hormones, they weaken themselves, they become slow. All that is irrelevant. If you're not female, you don't belong in the female category in sport under any circumstances.
That's a good place to agree. Thank you so much. I've taken more of your time than I meant to. So I want to finish by asking you, we always ask at the end a final question, throwing the love forward a little, your woman of the moment, someone you want to put the focus on and throw some love to.
Sophie Cunningham was the one that comes to mind right off the bat. It's just like,
Oh, yeah.
thank you for really being the first to say, not just like state the obvious, but then back it up by being like, I said what I said. I'm not going to debate this with you. So
Yeah.
I know she's not my sport, obviously. But I just think she's
What sport, for those that don't know, tell us just a little about Sophie.
and
She of
is
the
a
pointy
WNBA
finger.
player. She plays for the Indiana Fever, and she gave this interview with ESPN, and I think it was even like a few months ago, and they just published it, in which she says, it's not hate to say that women and girls.
Yeah. You think Sophie's good for her? Well, you between you, all you women have started this heading towards a tipping point. So, Mara, you're woman of the moment.
Yeah. I mean, in the UK, Turf Island, we're lucky to have so many iconic turfs. And in the sports field, Sharon Davis, Fiona McInerney, Emma Hilton, and others, we've got a sort of luxury of choice of brilliant turfs. I think I have to say my woman of the moment is Natalie, because so many of the women who speak up in sport are retired. We're in our 50s or older. We've done our careers, we have less to lose. It's much more difficult for the younger athletes to speak up. And just hearing more from Natalie when she was over in London with us, I just thought, this woman can see so clearly what's going on, and she's just not taking any nonsense from anybody.
Yeah.
And this is what we really need going forward. Us older women, 20, 30 years time, we won't have the energy for this anymore. So we really need the younger generations of women. And we have some fantastic female young turfs in the UK as well, like Connie Shaw and Maeve Halligan, but there aren't many in sport. But Natalie stuck her head above the parapet and stuck to her guns. And, she's very much, I said what I said, she's not backing down. So, yeah. I have to say, we have a top turf trophy, which we award to the best parkrun turf when we have these gatherings. And Natalie won it. So the trophy is now in America with Natalie, which means she has to come back to turf. Fantastic.
Top turf.
So that means
Natalie has
to and do another parkrun with us. We all have to go to the USA for our next gathering. Yeah. Another of our group is Claire Hallisey, who was my teammate in the 2012 London Olympic Marathon. And she spent a lot of time in the US, and I think she's going to be over there quite soon, and hopefully we'll all be going there with her.
So however hard it's been for everybody, we've met some amazing people, haven't we?
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you to our listeners. We really hope that you've enjoyed this episode. And if you have, please do like, share, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff to help keep our channel growing and spread the word. Thank you.